to CommonMansplaining. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Welcome back. Eddie and Christian here. Christian, how's it going?
Great. You sure we're live? I don't see anything up there. Should be a count for people watching.
I got it.
Okay, there we are. There we are. I see it. All right. Good.
Yeah, anyway, you're just
Thank
behind
you
the
so
time.
much, everyone, for watching. We're back.
Indeed.
I know, adjusting to our new schedule on Thursday night.
There we are. Had that little sound snafu. All right. So, guys, today we're going to talk about election integrity, right? It's a pretty broad topic, but I want to just impress upon us how absolutely vital election integrity is, right? And that, as you guys are well aware, there's this big tension with regard to elections. And on the right-hand side, for the most part, you have people that want to secure the election. I want to make sure that the election security is strong. On the left-hand side, you want to make sure that the election access is high, right? Because the right wants to make sure that the election can't be tampered with. The left wants to make sure that the election doesn't leave anybody out who would otherwise want to vote. And both of these are very important things. But yeah, Christian, why don't you tell us just how terribly important election security is?
Well, yeah. So elections, right? America revitalized elections. They haven't been a thing since Rome.
Yes.
And again, the integrity of elections, right, is one of the biggest things. If you can call your elected leaders illegitimate, is if you say they weren't elected, fair and square, that there were shenanigans when it came to that. And I still think we look throughout the world, so many countries don't have real elections where there's a real opposition party that's legal, that people have a choice between, right? It's like you have to have a good opposition. People have to have choices, right? Stalin and like Kim Jong-un famously, won 100% of their elections because there was nobody else on the ballot. Like, or Saddam Hussein, when before he was deposed on election, it was just check yes or check no. Oh, everybody loves me. And it's like those aren't real elections, right? And I feel like if we could have real, fair, and honest elections, Iran wouldn't be an enemy. I don't think Russia would be an enemy, right? Anyway.
Right.
So this is a thing that we've tried to promote around the world, but at home has recently been called into question. Starting the 2000 was the first time in my memory that we had an election night dispute that stretched on past election night.
Right.
Those of you who are younger may not know how viral the term hanging Chad was. Right? But, so what happened, right? Bush won that election, but was called illegitimate his whole first term. Right? Anything he tried to do, it was like, we don't need to do that. You're an illegitimate, right? And we can see that. And when people don't feel like that their votes are counted or that it's all fixed or all rigged, right? Then they opt out, or what we see now, I think a thing is that people think that the laws shouldn't apply to them, especially federal government laws. Right?
Yeah.
You see this nullification. They don't, even laws that were passed bipartisan, when an elected leader, Trump, goes in to enforce those laws, people think like, well, you're illegitimate. I don't recognize your right to enforce these laws, and you have rights. And not that legitimate leaders can't do things to cause riots, but it creates this tinderbox thing that makes governing so much more fraught.
Absolutely.
And because if you accept that Trump's legitimate, that the vote was correct, that he won the popular vote, then you realize he campaigned on immigration enforcement. You knew this was something, and you see that his actions are the legitimate will of the people being enacted. But if you instead don't trust the election, and you think it was just manipulated by the elites, then you're like, I don't want to submit to this illegitimate act. And so your whole perception of government and government enforcement and the laws, we're a nation of laws where the rule of law changes if you don't trust that the elections were free and fair.
Right. Absolutely.
I want to add to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's really that is the primary pillar of a government by the people, right? Like if you don't have that's basically the only interface that the people can truly apply their will, right? Like other than that, if you don't have a fair election process, then you basically can't have a government by the people. All you have is a government by elites, and then the people are just sort of around to like pay lip service and or to like be the pretend force behind their mandates, right? Now, I wanna take some time today to discuss the left's argument because it's an argument that does need to be taken into account because what a lot of people, some of the, especially the younger generation, doesn't realize some of the voter suppression tactics that we faced in history, right? And so they may be, it's easy to look at a claim that the right just wants to suppress votes and think that it's ridiculous, and it is largely ridiculous, but it's if you at least look at the history and you put it in context, you'll at least understand why the fear is there, right? You'll understand that we did do this in the past, right? And it does need to be addressed. At least needs to be curtailed, right? At least needs to be paid attention to. So,
Well,
the very
hold on.
sure, sure.
I'll say in the past, the right or the people conservative on this was the Democrat Party,
Yeah,
right?
of course,
After
right, right.
Reconstruction, right? And in the 60s, those that were using voter ID or vote integrity or vote security or fraud, vote fraud was a way to suppress and keep minorities from voting, especially in the South where minorities or blacks outnumbered whites.
Right,
So
right, right,
the only way to maintain, 100% white rule was to use this, right? We
right.
condemn neither Eddie or I, right, are supportive of any of those actions, and they're
Not at all.
un-American, right?
Right.
American, and so justly, the Supreme Court came down very hard on and made the southern states, had to how they gerrymandered everything about their elections was monitored by the, but gradually that has been lifted because the Supreme Court realizes it's not 1875, it's not even 1960, 1965, and
Right.
things have changed,
Absolutely.
and you can now real considerations of fraud. Right. Well, we don't want to suppress citizens voting. We want to suppress fraud.
Yeah,
Right.
illegal. Right.
So that people in real terms cannot, right, not fake or fraudulently vote, but also the people can trust. Now,
Right.
I talked to my brother about this, and he said that there hasn't been shown really any large evidence of in-person voting fraud.
That's the
Right.
classic
Well,
first
right,
argument.
right. And it's true. Most of the disputes that they're having, like in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Wisconsin, are with absentee ballots.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
It doesn't
Yep.
mean that there haven't been problems with in-person voting in the past. I don't,
Of course.
we can talk about that a little bit later. We talk
It's
about
worth
Illinois and whatever, but so he thinks that it's asking for voter ID coming from the left is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Right?
right. So
That's his
what
argument.
the first thing that people need to remember about voter fraud, right, is just like so many other illegal things, we don't know what we don't know. Right.
Yeah.
This is the biggest. This is like it to say that there isn't evidence of something that's illegal that people
That's
are actively
clandestine.
yeah,
Yeah.
that people are actively trying to hide is like it's a fundamentally fallacious argument, right? It's kind of like when people give me polls about what illegal undocumented immigrants do. And I'm like, so this poll tells me what they do except for the undocumented ones, right? Because they're not documented. That's the whole
Yeah.
point, right? Like these people are specifically trying to mask their actions, and you're telling me you've got the answer to all of the masked actions? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, you can make some educated guesses, right? You can play with some numbers, and there's probably upper bounds that you can play with, but yeah, that's just a fundamentally flawed argument from the get-go. So, on the ballot now, or up for vote, right? Is or not yet, but they've introduced the SAVE Act, right? And the SAVE Act is a law that is supposed to require states to require documentary proof of citizenship, right? Pretty straightforward. And it's mostly stuff that would be compliant with real ID, right? The stuff that you would normally use to prove citizenship, like passports or birth certificates, but it is not limited to that, right? So one of the first counter arguments you'll hear from the left is, oh, what about people that don't have birth certificates and passports? Well, first of all, just get them. First of all, right?
There are definitely agencies in Raleigh and in most cities to help people that
literally
struggle.
every
And
city.
this is actually why we give you months, or why they're trying to give you months in advance. It'd be one thing if they were springing this the week of the election,
Right.
or
Right.
right,
You got
but they're
literally like a
saying,
year.
hey, in 10 months, be ready to have this,
Right. And
right?
you don't even need it, by the way.
Yeah.
Like this is the craziest part about this that people seem to like. I guess when I read it, I guess I read the whole thing and just everybody else just kind of like reads the first line or something like that. There are alternatives that the state's required to provide for people who don't have documents. So I don't understand where this argument even comes from, because it's like, what about the people that don't have them? I'm like, okay, this is for the people that don't have them. This other line in the text right here. Like, I don't understand. The states are required to offer a different, because you can like, I think they can sign an affidavit or something like that, or like a personal attestation, or I don't know. But like, there's plenty of other options for the people that don't have those documents. But first of all, just get them. Like, just get those Most people have them anyway. Like, most people have access to them. And I mean, yeah, sometimes you had a birth certificate once in your life and you lost it, and you have to go get a new one, and it's an inconvenience, but it's not a big one, right? So, like, to discuss one of the first voter suppression tactics that they used back in the day, like a long, long time ago, right? They used to have literacy tests, right? Knowing that people who just walked off the plantation were not as literate on average as people who had been free citizens their whole lives, and their family were free citizens, and everybody on and on and on, right? Now, people are trying to equate the SAVE Act to a literacy test, in that one of the steps in the process is that someone might ask someone verbally, are you a citizen? Now, I don't even want to I don't even want to get into how many different ways that is a bad equivalency. Like, first of all, asking somebody a single question is not the same thing as an entire literacy test for a language. Second of all, they have phones on them that are personal pocket translators. They can just hit the little and have you speak into the phone, and it will tell them what you mean. Third of all, they don't even have to answer the question. They could just bring the documents in advance, and then even if they were like mute, they would just be able to hand you the documents, and the question is just superfluous. It's just funny though, because it's like I'm hearing people like argue, because it's like, well, there's a specific provision in the thing that says they can ask you, are you a citizen? I'm like, oh my gosh, are you guys serious right now? This is the kind of stuff that we have to deal with.
Well, it infantilizes minorities. And right, this week there was a poll much talked about where they asked people, right, are you in favor of having to show an ID to vote? Right?
Yep.
Whites, it was very high, but it was over 76% for blacks. Latinos was even higher than that in the 80s.
Yep.
And so they don't find this racist at all.
Not at all.
Right? The idea, so it's really white liberals imagining a problem that doesn't exist.
As a matter of
Right?
fact, many of them that I've spoken to personally, now, this is not a statistic, this is anecdotal, but many of them that I have spoken to personally find it racist that people are assuming they can't get them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, my friends are like, why would you think that? My grandmother's got all this stuff, and she's like completely tech illiterate, like, can barely walk. And she's got all this stuff. And if she didn't, she would just get it. Like, we would help her get it, or somebody, like it.
You have 10 months notice. Yeah.
Yeah, to assume that somebody can't access this stuff is like, really? Really? Okay. So the next argument that they try to equate this to are the poll taxes, right? So back in the day, they used to charge poll taxes, and the poll taxes way back in the day were like $1 or $2 or something. Now that might seem like a small amount of money, but back then, that was like almost 3 days' wages for somebody who was at the lowest echelon of the earning pool, right? That was like a lot of money. That's like today's equivalent of like several $100s, right? Now, again, there's a myriad of differences here. Number one, several $100s is different than the $15 we charge for some of this stuff, right? Like I think a birth certificate maybe costs 30 or something to get a copy, but all you need is I think all you need is a real ID plus a form of citizenship or alternatives, right? Some of the alternatives are free, actually, believe it or not. So there really isn't any cost involved at all. The ID that you would get you would use for other stuff anyway. So it's multi-purpose. It's not like you're getting it just for this, like you would in a poll tax. Like a poll tax, they had to specifically pay just for that. And
I will say poll taxes have a long history, right?
yeah,
Jesus and Mary and Joseph were paying a poll tax, right? That's what they would do, right? Once a year, you would just pay your taxes at one point. They call it a poll tax, like when you're being counted or when you're
right,
casting your vote. That's just when you pay your taxes for the year. So it's
right,
not necessarily a tax just to vote, but that's the time when they know you're interacting with the government. Here, you're being counted, recognized as a citizen, and paying your tax.
right.
So, but equating it with if you don't pay that, you can't cast your vote is a unacceptable level of voter suppression.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And again, like, yeah, I don't know anybody, even the poorest of the poor in America, right? This is one of the differences too, is like the amount of wealth in the nation, right? Like the back then, right, the lowest echelon of the financial group might in fact actually be destitute, might be starving, might be, facing serious problems. Whereas today, the worst we get is somebody that just has to use government assistance, and then the government pays for a lot of this stuff, right? You can like get fed for free, you can get housed for free, you can get your power for free, and so like that person really
Our
isn't
our
doing that.
abject poor, our abject poor have refrigerators in their homes
Right?
and
Filthy rich,
high definition televisions.
right?
100%. Anyway,
But I know guys that are in the lowest income bracket, so they say, and these guys have like stuff that I don't have, like PS5s, and what I'm like, what are
yeah.
you doing with this stuff? Like an 82-inch TV, and I'm like, what? Why? I don't have an 82-inch TV. Why do you have an 82 inch? But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, so comparatively, proportionately, $15 is like nothing. It's like nothing, right? And they would have already spent that $15 for these items to use in other situations, like getting
Yeah.
on a plane or getting an age restricted product, because almost every single one of these guys that I know buys lottery tickets or alcohol or cigarettes or whatever, or blah 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 blah. You have to have all that stuff already. Already. So it's not even remotely close to a poll tax. Now, that being said, and we'll get into some of my recommendations going forward. I
Mhm.
don't have any problem with like a specialized card specifically for voting, like a voter ID card.
Mhm.
And if it's issued for free, okay, great. Like I have no problem with that. I have no, I think it would just be another card to hold on to, kind of like annoying, like just another extra thing to track. But VMBLV says, remember, I work at McDonald's paying my health care, but on the other hand, you could fill the foods on the cart for, yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. Everybody has access that they did not have access to back in the day, right? This is a completely different world we live in.
And there are organizations that will help you and assist you. And if you can't pay for it, they'll even, right, pony up
Absolutely.
for it. Right.
Absolutely.
So if you ask for help, there's people out there to help you, especially because we're giving notice. So again, I'm not buying, and neither are minorities buying the argument that asking for an ID in 2025 is in any way racist or suppressive, even if it was something that was used for that purpose 60 or 120 years ago. It's
Right.
not today, right?
Right.
They've
So
moved
then,
on. We should move on.
so then now the question is, right? If 80% of the world knows that this is fine, right? Where's the pushback really coming from? Right? Like, obviously, we know where it's coming. Yeah, and this is something I want everybody in the audience to do too. Is like, whenever when you see pushback like this, you should ask yourself, where's it coming from and why? And in general, my default assumption is that somebody in the political world is always going to do things for money or power. That's just a default assumption. Not always do I know
Well,
which one.
self-interest.
Right.
There's self-interest, and then self-interest is money or power.
Right. There's self-interest, money, and power. Right. Like, and usually, sometimes it's party instead of like individual
Well,
interest, but
party political power, but yeah.
yeah, political power. Right. And so in this case, I would think that the answer is relatively clear. It's political power. Right. And of course, money is a side effect because every single one of them gets filthy rich after they get in office for a couple of years. Right. So you have people like Chuck Schumer fighting this, where he knows his constituents aren't, against this thing. The answer should be obvious to everybody. It should be obvious when everybody that's underneath somebody, it supports somebody, says, no, this is just fine. And then that politician is still like, no, 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 this is not fine. Believe me. Then you should know off the top that that person is something in it for them. Right. And in the Democrat situation, obviously, I would say, this is my guess, my hypothesis. My hypothesis is that over time, the political mass moves right on average because people on the right have more babies, and stuff like that. There's a huge propensity of kids to take on their parents' political views, things like that. So, like, if you don't mess with it, if you don't mess with the status quo at all, on average, what's going to happen is people are going to get more and more and more right unless you change something.
Well, as we get wealthier too and own more property, then we get more conservative, which is what we want. Our system is to increase prosperity for everyone. As people experience that prosperity on a personal level, they want more freedom and they want to move more right.
Right. And they want to be able to spend their own money as opposed to a government that's telling them how to do it for them. Right. Exactly. And so the Democrats basically have to provide a counterweight. They have to do something to stop that, or they'll just never be in power again. And so the two main ways that we've seen them do that through elections is, one, they flood the America with as many immigrants as they can. Illegal, legal, it doesn't really matter. All they really want is just as many masses as they can get into states like California and New York, all the states that are blue already, so that they're just like heating up the electoral count, right? So they have more people in Congress and they have more people in the electoral college when voting takes place. And then the other way that they do it is try to let those people vote. That's it. It's pretty simple, right? And if you have another explanation, like, I'm open to hear it, but
Well,
like, there's just no other.
Well, there's some anecdotal. So again, these are disputed stories from case studies, again, of clandestine activities, but it's widely seen that the mafia helped President Kennedy win the state of Illinois in the 1960 election, by manipulating that count a little bit, deceased people voting, a few other kind of shenanigans, because the unions, which were and still are lean Democratic, but were heavily Democratic at that time, had connections with the organized crime mafia.
Yes.
Mafia is not at all like it was in the 60s. Largely that has all been broken, don't have the power. But there are anecdotal stories about still some shenanigans with labor unions or things where are in poor neighborhoods, like in Philadelphia, there'd be neighborhoods or precincts where 100% of the people vote Democrat, not a single vote Republican.
Not one.
And and one person will vote, and then they'll, in their housing project or wherever they're, will just say, "Hey, are you going to vote today?" "No, I don't want to." "All right, I'll go vote for you." "Okay."
Right.
Or is people going and voting for someone that is not going to vote? Make sure that, so you have these neighborhoods that have 100% of the people showing up and 100% of the votes. Well, any sort of normal thing, like, there are going to be some people who don't vote, and there's going to be votes for other parties. But when you have every single person voting and every single person voting a single party, just raises eyebrows as it should. So statistically, that's unlikely.
Right.
And so those types of things were like, okay, we don't want people voting for people. Just show your ID, one person, one vote, right? If they care enough, they can get their way down there and they can vote and that. And so these are sort of the things that people have felt like clandestine or organized crime where that would happen in inner cities or places where there was this crime element, that having voter ID could help eliminate that we could at least trust that type of thing was not going on. Now, there have been very few criminal cases related to people trying to vote twice. In fact, a few of them that were people trying to vote for Trump that got caught, right? And so I don't want to say that there's a long time. These are anecdotal sort of stories told or things. But again, hush that these are done by organized crime groups that want to hide their actions, and then they're doing this usually for pay or for political influence for the person they're getting elected. Usually, maybe not a national figure, but a local politician. So that person will be beholden to their organization, maybe get them some benefits or things like that.
Again, money and power, right? It's it's what makes it. And what kind of an idiot would go vote twice and then get anyway? Obviously, most of the fraud in an election is going to take place in the most hidden aspect of it, right? So obviously, mail-in ballots are where it's at. People that stuff ballots, people that do ballot harvesting stuff in states that don't really allow it, and there's plenty of that. There are plenty. I could go into the 2020 election and into how many different anomalies there were and how many different obvious blatant fraudulent activity there was and stuff that wasn't even really supposed to be fraudulent but was just definitely against the law, for example, judges overruling election processes when it's supposed to be the state legislature and stuff like that by their constitution, and they're like, well, we're going to do this because it's COVID. There's plenty of different ways that you can mess with the system, right? And then both sides do it, right? Just like Christian just said, a couple of guys tried to vote for Trump twice. Every side has fraud, right? That's just a matter of course. The question is how much, and can you track it and things like that.
And we need to feel like that we're doing something to address it and minimize that so that people have trust. If we feel like, oh, there's fraud and it doesn't matter, nobody cares, we're not doing anything, that's when people's trust in the election goes down. But if they feel like we're at least trying, we're at least investigating, we're at least trying options, right? Maybe voter ID isn't the cure, maybe, right, to fraud, but it's certainly not a problem. Right. It's not a problem, right? There might be other steps that we need in addition to voter ID, but it's not a problem.
Right. And so if you were, okay, I would really love to hear from anybody who's on, who's against voter ID and they don't think that that's the way to secure elections. Fine. Give us an alternative, right? Give us another way where we can be sure that elections are secure, where I'm going to be like, okay, yeah, that'd do it, and I'm not married to voter ID. I think voter ID is probably the easiest way.
It feels very common sense. It feels very common sense.
Right. And not only that, this is the big thing, and this is the big thing that people, I think, miss when they do this comparison to voter suppression. Back when people were suppressing votes, the intent was to suppress votes, right? The intent was to keep certain groups of people from voting, right? Like people who were allowed to vote legally, but they just didn't want them to. Today, our intent is to make sure that only the people who are eligible to vote. That's it, right? My intent is for all the legal people to vote. I'm not trying to keep any group out. I'm not trying to keep, hold somebody down, or Democrat or Republican or black, white.
We don't want Canadians voting in our election, or Brits, or Russians, or Chinese.
I don't want Canadians voting in their elections.
Yeah.
They just need to. No, I'm kidding. But that's it. That's the intent. The intent is to make sure that our elections are secure, and that's it, right? So it's not obviously the left likes to impugn motives, and I get it, but That's not where it's at, right? So the other thing too is
I
that,
mean, this has been part of their electoral strategy is not only importing minorities, but then to tell them that the GOP or the Republican Party is racist, and
of
hates
course,
you, and you can only get representation by voting for somebody from your tribe or for the Democratic Party, thing like that. So that identity politics, we've seen that played, and we're not buying it anymore. We're
yeah,
not. And really, they're not buying it either. Right? This is why we saw records numbers of Latinos and blacks vote for Trump.
yep.
Now, they were still a minority, but more percentage wise than in the past, is they're not buying these arguments. And even today, in spite of the resistance to Trump's agenda, they know that it's the Republican Party is not inherently racist. We just want to enforce the law.
Right. And, here's another point that I want to bring up. People will say stuff like, well, where's the evidence of this fraud, right? You don't need evidence of something to fix a problem, right? Or a potential problem. Like, for example, there is no current evidence of someone invading American soil. That doesn't mean that we don't keep a standing army, right? Like, you don't need evidence of a bad thing occurring to keep it from occurring. That's a silly argument to begin with, right? Um, the core assumption is just we have to make sure that we understand the core assumption is that both sides are going to manipulate things to keep or maintain power unless we hold them accountable, right? We the people. So we got to make sure that we do now. And yeah, the Save Act does not require. This is not a. It's just a documentary proof, not a verbal like test, not a large quantity of money that people have to pay. We're not sending like, the mafia down to the polls to rough people up. None of the typical voter suppression tactics are in play here. That's it. Like none of them. All right. Let's see. So I do want to take some time to make my recommendations, though, for what I think an election should look like in a perfect world, right? Knock on wood. And I know that it's not going to be easy getting there, but one thing that I would like to see that I think this is an argument I hear from the left a lot, and I think it is a legitimate desire, right? It's not necessary, but it's fine, right? Like there'd be no problem with it, and there's nothing like I don't see any problem with you know, give and take here
What's
and
the
there.
idea? Just give me
The
the idea.
idea is National Election Day. I have no problem with a holiday for national elections. Like no problem with it at all. As a matter of fact, so one, of course, their gripes are kind of invalid. Like they say, well, without that, people just won't vote, can't vote because they're stuck at work and stuff. I'm like, nah, that's not really accurate. But I see no problem with having that holiday anyway, right? Like, why not set aside a day? Tuesday, everybody gets out and vote. We go out to eat, we hang out with the boys, we go vote, and make it a party. I think it would enhance civic duty, right? I think everybody would take that day. I think it would probably what do we have, like 60, I don't know, it's like 50, 40, 50% of our voter turnout or something like that in the country. It would, why not make it 70 or 80%? I see no problem with that. I would like to see an election that's electronic. I don't think that people I hear the conservative side say, no, it all needs to be paper ballots and, hey, hand counted and this, that, and the other. And like, I get it. I get that that's like old school and it's probably the most secure, probably, but maybe not. Like, I think human error can cause just as many problems when you're like going like, all right, this is the 472,396th paper I've checked off, to make sure you can get bogged down just as badly with making mistakes as you can with insecure elections. So I think we should go electronic. I think I have no problem with it. I like technology. I like science, unless it's AI. So I think we should have some kind of like electronic voting system. I have no problem as long as we're verifying, right? And there's plenty of ways to do it. Like
Yeah,
when
we've
I
got a log file for every voter, right? Rather than just the sum up. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. There should be like outrageous amounts of like being able to verify this. We should have independent technicians that are able to check each, kiosk or whatever at all times. And it should be open source. so that everyone can verify it independently. Like it's not like some one company holding the secret like Dominion was. And there's a lot of different things that you can do to like secure it on that end. But I feel like when I signed up for cryptocurrency online or like another bank account, you have to you have to smile, you have to put your picture up there, you have to take a picture of your ID. It tracks facial recognition to make sure you're the same person, this, that, and the other. It's very, if you're registering in advance, it's a very extensive process just to get like a normal account online. We should just do the same thing for registration here. And not only that, it can like tie the back end to like the DMV records and make sure that they're actually a citizen. It can track, this, that, and the other. I think it would make everything easier, and it would solve some of our other problems too. Like, for example, like
Well, all right, hold on. Before we get there, I'm interested in the solutions, but it is still very controversial to have for the government to have a database of citizens.
Really?
Right? Yeah. The you could the voting thing could just check and ping. Oh, is this a database of citizens? Like there's still opposition. Nothing like that officially exists. If it does, it's clandestine, NSA classified. National security.
DMV records.
Those are states, but there's nothing at the federal level.
Like
a federal database of citizens.
Well,
states have their records.
I don't think you need one, do you? You could just tie it into the state.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, I do. It's funny. I ran into that same argument online today. Like somebody said that, that's like Nazis demanding papers and stuff like that. I'm like, really? I don't see the connection really, but I get it. I mean, I get that,
Right, we're not saying you can't live your life, but if you want to vote, verify your papers to vote. I mean, it's not like you can't eat the sandwich, you can't walk on the street, but you're voting in our elections. You're participating with the government. That's what a vote is. You're participating and making your voice. So you are governing this country.
And it seems like
that's not just like eating a sandwich.
It seemed like if your information is on the state's records, and then the federal government can access the state's records anytime they want, that seems like a silly distinction, right? Like a distinction without a difference. Anyway, but yeah, so I do get it. I get that you might not want that. Like I get that, I would have a problem.
I'm not either here or there, but there has been opposition to it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I would have a problem with like a gun registry, because that's a way of like tracking potential. But anyway, it's kind of a different topic. But yeah, I do get it. But I wish that we had like an automatic voter registration like process. Like if anytime you have like an interface with the government already, like you're at the DMV, you get your license, they should just be like, register to vote right there. Right. Unless you say no, like unless you say, I don't want to register to vote, it should be like, here's your driver's license. Here's your voter registration card. Thank you. Have a great day. Like that's just because again,
if you move, you have to re-register, but
Yeah, right. If you have to, and I think that we should have same day registration too. I don't think it should be a problem just to as long as you can verify your ID and everything without problems, and you don't have to like escalate. I think this whole process could be much more streamlined. It's kind of like immigration to me. Like, do I want the security of making sure that only legal people come in? Yes, but I also feel like the process could be very, very much streamlined. I don't feel like it should be this complicated. Shouldn't have people like waiting behind. Right. I want to amend the Constitution and change Article 1, Section 4 and Article 2, Section 1 so that elections should be, I think that federal elections should be run by the federal government.
Oh, interesting. I'm a skeptic of that. And I don't think, well, even if that was something we wanted, I don't think that our Congress can move on that. I think we're still probably 5 or 6 Congresses away from.
Yeah, to keep in mind, this is not going to actually happen. Most of this stuff isn't going to happen, but this is just my venture to try to. I think that if only the federal election stuff, like this, I think the states should be able to maintain their own election process for their own elections, however they wish. But I'm sick and tired of like 7 weeks later, we're still not done counting in Pennsylvania and nonsense like that. Like that's ridiculous. Everybody should be on, when it's a federal election, everybody should be on the same process, should have their stuff done that day or the day after, like at max. Max. Everything should be tabulated the day after, Big Tuesday or whatever. That should be it. Because I'm tired of waiting around for that stuff. That's like ridiculous. And like every single person's got their own process. That's part of where fraud sneaks in, is people like targeting the weaker processes, finding like the states that have weaker, units. I think it should be, boom, boom, boom. I would like to, here's another bone I throw to the left. I would like to have automatic re-registration for felons after the first offense. I think you should just automatically get the ability to vote again automatically the first time. Because
Well,
I feel like
they have that. Most states have that. North Carolina has that once you're off probation.
yeah, most of them like, or they'll let
I
you
don't
do it
know.
if
Is
you like.
Florida? Florida might not, but
Florida,
North
you have to.
Carolina,
Florida,
felons
you
can
have to do
vote.
a thing where you have to like request it from their clemency board or something like that. But I think they do usually give it to you. But I think it should just be like your congratulations, you walked out of jail, boom, you can vote. That way, because I feel like one of the big, not that it's going to solve all the problems or anything, but I feel like one of the biggest things that happens to felons is they have trouble reintegrating. And I think that's part of the buy-in in society, is that you have, civic powers, basically.
Mhm.
Let's see, what else? I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I wrote down regarding like how to keep the electronic side of it safe, stuff but it's kind of boring. I don't want to bore everybody with it, but I just,
I have a couple other not I guess related to actual casting ballots, but other things related to elections that I would like to see changed.
yeah,
One of them, every state has a different barrier to entry
yeah,
to become a candidate, and some of them are just ridiculous.
yeah,
And really, like, it's because whoever gets elected now, like the senator, they want to make it really hard for anybody to primary
take
challenge
it
them
away.
or something like that.
Yep.
And even like to get on the primary ballot for a president in Virginia, you've got to go to every single county and get like something like 3 or 4,000 signatures in every
Yeah.
single county in the state to do before you can be on the primary ballot as a president. And
Crazy.
you need these huge organizations and to take this time, and it's really time consuming. So these barrier to entries for candidates, I feel like, need to come down.
Yeah. I
And
agree.
I think that will give us a chance to have more trust in our elections too.
That
That
should be
it does feel
standardized.
like a good old boys club, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna handpick like sort of my successor when I'm retiring. This is who I want to take over, and all my organization's gonna take care of all that stuff for them so they qualify as a candidate, right?
Yep.
We need not just elites to be able to run for office. Now I understand
Yeah.
that comes with its own problems. We had somebody today asking Scott Bissett questions about tariffs, who's never dropped out of college, never had a job in his life, right? And and he's a 25-year-old who got elected, and he's asking Scott Bissett about like the tariffs on bananas in Colombia, and Scott Bissett's just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't begin to
Right.
educate you on this."
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is this thing between qualification and obviously for appointed positions, we vet and they have to be confirmed to make sure they're qualified. But for elected positions, we should allow people to vote for who they want, even if they're going to vote for Davy Crockett types or people that maybe aren't traditional like lawyers or lawmakers, just because
Yeah.
they want their voice heard.
Right.
And so there has to be a place where, at least for people to trust that they have a chance to participate, have their voice heard.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
you know,
Oh, big one for me.
and maybe more. Maybe we raise the cap from 435 representatives. Maybe it's 500. Maybe it's back up. Maybe it's higher than that.
Maybe.
I
All
feel
right.
like that number was frozen just because the space in the Capitol building was getting tight.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
I
Yeah.
don't feel like that's justification in 2025 anymore. And
Right.
we need better ratios of representatives to
We could
population.
we could build a big, beautiful new Congress room. A big,
Yeah.
beautiful. Anyway,
We
so all right,
absolutely could.
big one for me. I
Sure.
think we should overturn Citizens United immediately. I think that businesses do not have individuals' rights. That's just me personally. I think philosophically, it was a mistake. I think it definitely backs us into a corner where businesses are basically able to control like 90% of elections now.
Well,
Everything's run by
it's not a
package.
law. How would you overturn it?
Well,
'Cause
it was right. It was a decision. You would basically have to go back in and challenge it again, I guess, or something like that. I think the
and
whole
challenge
campaign.
and you're challenging to essentially strip rights, speech rights that exist. I think that even though people they don't like the consequences of it. They
Yeah,
don't like
well,
the effects of it.
I don't think that they have those rights, though. I just don't think that businesses inherent. I think the individual does, right? Like, I would have no problem with an individual taking like the proceeds from, like, a CEO taking the proceeds from his business, saying like, "All right, this is my salary and bonuses," and then him doing something with his speech. No problem with that, right? But
So
I
he's
do not
putting
like
his
it.
name behind it, not the corporation.
But part of the problem with this is it's multi-pronged, right? Like, if it was just that one thing, it wouldn't be a problem necessarily. Part of the other problem is the way that they do campaign finance law for federal elections is the way that they have like this nepotized favoritism for specifically the Republican and Democrat party, right? And the way that the people can funnel money into exactly those two parties through the RNC and the DNC is like outrageously unfair. No other party will ever become president because of that. No other party can like even really sneak into the Senate or Congress because of that. Because they can basically, like, if you donate to a president, you can donate like $3,000 per person or something like that. But you can take a PAC and donate virtually unlimited amounts to the Republican National Convention, and who will then take an outrageous amount of that money and divvy it up to all of their people the way that they see fit. And that's not fair because libertarians can't do it, Green Party can't do it, independents can't do it. Only Republicans and Democrats can do it.
Yeah.
So that's
these barriers to entries, I think, should come down, and I think as if people a consequence of people not trusting the elections or seeing these corrupt things that are barring them from being heard, having redress, as you're going to see, right? Because there's about 40% of the country is this independent group that swings, right? Oh, we feel like the country needs to go right. We feel like the country needs to go left. And they're the ones that swing the elections, right? The toss-up votes, the swing voters. They're going to form their own party, the American Independent Party, right? That Elon Musk has talked about, and that's the real problem. If they feel like I feel like if the Democrat Party really collapses and dies, there needs to be an opposition party. It would be this American Independent, but it could grow. If you can really get 40% of the people independents to finally be like, I'm fed up with what the other
right.
parties are doing, and have a true independent party, that could happen.
It wouldn't happen though. That's the problem. The problem is even if they got it all together, right? Like the person who came closest in our lifetime and probably ever was Ross Perot, right? He was the only person that even was remotely close to like edging into the two major players, right? And he got screwed out of it because of exactly that problem. Like, he literally couldn't even get on the ballot in one of the states for the longest time because and people were like threatening him off and like saying like, get out of here, like literally like intimidating him out of the election. He had to drop out, come back in, and he still took down like 19% of the vote. Like, he could have been a player if the campaign finance law wasn't stacked against him, and if he was allowed to, like, again, he couldn't get on even on the ballots in all the states because but if you're Republican or Democrat, you're automatically accepted in every state. That's garbage. Like, that kind of favoritism shouldn't exist. That's inherently unfair, right? We should seek an inherently fair election. Now, I don't know about I've been kicking around whether or not we ought to be a two-party system in general. I don't know. That's something I'm not sure of. I can see,
Well, we don't want to
benefits
be a
to it.
one-party system.
Right. We definitely don't want to be a one-party system. I know there's definitely downsides to being like a four-party system or a five-party system, right? Like to end up with people in office who don't actually have the majority of the vote is a downside, right? People don't see that, but if you've only got like 28% of the vote, but you beat everybody, then you can't really say you have a mandate. You can't really say that you're enacting the will of the people. You can't. You're very easily dismissed as like not important. There's a lot of problems to that. But that being said, I don't want to like stack the deck just to make it so that doesn't happen either. I don't know. So yeah, those are my.
I think manipulation of elections by elites is something that we need to be really worried about. It is something that has happened in the past. Now, Joseph Stalin, I think, is sort of a classic example of this. Do you know how Joseph Stalin came to take over and become the ruler of the Soviet Union?
Vaguely.
All right, so he wasn't the president. And when the communists took over, the Bolsheviks, right, after the revolution, they were divvying up power, right? And like Lenin, right, he was the leader, he became the president. And then you had this guy, I want to be in control of the army, Trotsky, and I want to be in control of this and this and this and this. And nobody was really interested in being the secretary of the Communist Party. Somebody said, we can just give that to Stalin. And Stalin didn't really want the army or something big and powerful.
Something important.
But he realized as that secretary, he got to decide who was on committees. He got to put his cronies in, his yes men, his supporters in. And he got to decide when elections within the party were held, who was a party member, and count the votes. Right now, there's a quote that is said it's apocryphal, but it was attributed to his secretary, who his personal secretary, who fled the country in 1928.
All that matters
is he said, like, I don't care, right, who the party vote for. That doesn't matter. What matters is who counts the votes.
Yeah.
Right? And so, he had no moral qualms about manipulating elections to his ends. And so when Lenin died, you would think, okay, there was somebody else who was president. Okay, this person would become the next leader. Nope. It was whoever was secretary. And that tradition followed, right?
Nice.
Gorbachev even, right? Or Khrushchev, all of the followers, Gorbachev, the most powerful person in there was not the president. It was the secretary, the general secretary of the Communist Party, right? Because he got to decide when votes happened, and he got to count the votes. Right?
Well, Putin was what, KGB? I don't know. Did he follow the same trend?
It was KGB, and he's not Communist Party. He's not really communist, but he's authoritarian. But these were right. So manipulating elections is very, very powerful, and our elites would love to do it. There's America. There's so much power. There's so much wealth. And when they see somebody like Trump, a disruptor who wants to disrupt their world, their globalist order, or the things that they're doing, especially things that feed them power and wealth, they want to oppose that. And they will. And if they can do that by manipulating even a few swing states, the vote, and get their person in there that will allow their networks, parasitic, legal or not, to continue, they're going to do that. So they're highly incentivized to defraud our country. We need to not be naive about that and be vigilant, constant vigilance to maintain the integrity of our votes. And that might involve some uncomfortable things or having to do some extra steps like provide ID. We need to get over the fact and not buy the arguments that these are inherently racist and always will be racist. These are right, and say, grow up. It's 2026.
Really?
It's the modern information age. You're going to need to provide some information.
Yeah, right. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult. It really shouldn't. And I've never personally, this is anecdotal, but I've never personally stumbled upon someone who's like, oh, I can't get ID because I'm Cuban or whatever, right? Nobody says that. Nobody has that trouble. So yeah, it's funny. I was talking to this guy today who was trying to convince me that the open borders way is the way to go. And I'm like, every time Trump tries to like steer us toward a more global future where America's in charge, right? Like where he buys Greenland or something like that, all of a sudden all this resistance pops up. Because they're not actually for a globalist order; they're for their globalist order. That's what they want. They wouldn't have a problem with it as long as they're running it. But the moment someone else tries to do something, like I'd have no problem with a world order if it was the American world order, right? Like
we're inviting people to join us. Hey, Canada, you want to join us? Right?
Right?
Mexico, you want to join us? South America, Panama, you want to join us? But
No
yeah,
problem.
we're not going to provide things for you for free anymore, right? And let you be a parasite. That order is Trump is seeking to end.
Yeah, and it's funny too is they wouldn't have to change anything. Like Canada could basically just be exactly like they are right now. I don't think the only thing they would lose is like Bill C-19, stuff like that. Like they would lose the ability to hinder others from having free speech. But like
and guns, people could own guns again.
People could own guns, but other than that, other than our basic rights that we preserve, nothing would change. They could still be every bit as socialist as they are now. They could still do
on a state level, yes.
Yeah, on a state level, right. Same thing for whatever, Netherlands, whoever we end up. But anyway,
yeah. Netherlands, wow, that's a spicy take.
Yeah, right. That'd be neat, right? We did. Anyway, anybody have any other questions about the election process? Any other questions? Any comments?
Well, ideas too. I mean, one of the big things when I've engaged leftists, like about Minnesota, and they're upset about, I'm like, okay, you don't like how the administration's handling fraud in Minnesota. What's something you would accept? What's a change you would accept? Crickets. Yep. And I've yet to see anybody just come up with like just anything that you would accept as a change. Something has to change, right?
Exactly.
And this is part of the thing for us to trust our elections more. Something has to change. What would you on the left accept? If you say no, we want status quo and unverified elections to remain, into the 21st, 22nd century, we're rolling our eyes at you. Say, come on, there's got to be something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Work with us here. Work with us here.
Right. Yeah. Here's the other thing too, is like, even if they're, that first argument that we discussed where they're saying, it's not actually a real problem to solve, even if that were true, it wouldn't matter because more than 60% of the America thinks it's a real problem to solve. So like, it wouldn't even matter.
It would increase their trust. Yeah, it would increase their trust.
Absolutely. And no, it's the same thing for like the way that ICE handles things in Minnesota. It's like, we don't like the way they're doing it. It's like, okay, what would you do to actually bring people to justice who are in fact breaking immigration law? And then most of them are like, well, we just wouldn't. It's like, well, then you're just not upholding the law. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can't nullify the law. The law is still valid.
Yeah,
right?
I would.
And these elections are still valid, even if we feel like they're not. That's the issue, right? And we want people to feel like they're valid, but we actually want them to be valid. And we want them to know, okay, this election had consequences. This is the will of the people, especially when the politician like Trump was honest about what he was going to do. Now, if Trump had said nothing about immigration enforcement, the whole time he'd been campaigning, you could be clutching your pearls. But this is exactly what he said. He said it over and over again, was very clear. He won on that, and now he's just doing what he said. This is the will of the American people and not just the whims of a despot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Somebody was hitting me with I said, ICE needs to have our support, and they're like, oh, you're a bootlicker. I'm like, no, we're the ones that voted for this. We're the boot. It's like Tim said, like we're the people who are enacting this will. We're not the people licking somebody else's desires. This is our desire to actually
the will of the American people. Yeah.
But what do I know? But anyway, Guys, thanks so much. Sorry, it was kind of like a slow night, but we appreciate you guys tuning in anyway. If you guys want to support the channel in another way, we have a Patreon. I'm still kicking out ideas as to how we're going to implement that, but we're definitely interested in suggestions. If anybody wants to be a part of this channel and like come on as a guest and debate, we'd love to have you. And so you just feel free to reach out with some comments in some of the sections, and I'll answer. I basically answer most of them. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and tell all of your friends about us. Catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.
Keep it coming.